Hello everyone, welcome to Talking Health with Dr. Laz, your favorite health program on television. We're reaching you from Nigeria's capital city, Abuja. My name is Dr. Laz Eze. Recall that last week, we started a conversation on promoting rights of patients and also tackling medical negligence. There were two case studies that's still trending on social media about a case of two young girls in Lagos, Nigeria, who were ill and taken to different private health facilities and were allegedly mismanaged and had to die, unfortunately. So we'll be taking accounts from friends of one of the girls who happened to be an orphan, and also get some experts here in the studio to kind of comment. With the view of using this as a point or as a case, to educate ourselves further on what we need to do better as professionals, both as doctors and also even as patients, and how we can prevent this from happening to any other person. We are going to take a break, and when we return, I will have a couple of friends of Omolara Omoya, who is late now, and they will share their insight. Do stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Talking Health with Dr. Laz, your favorite health program on television. Yes, you're joining me via Zoom from Lagos, Nigeria, are Ms. Ayomide Oni, who is a friend to late Omolara Omoya. You're welcome to the program, Ayomide.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Hello, Ayomide, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay,
Thank
welcome to the program. Also, joining from Zoom in Lagos is also a friend to Omolara, Mr. Olusegun Oloronikpa. You're welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor.
Thank you very much. Both of you, made posts on social media. I recall Ayomide made the first post that went viral. Then later I saw your video, Mr. Shegun, about the unfortunate incident that happened to your friend. Let me start with you, Ayo. You accompanied Omolara to the hospital. Can you briefly explain what happened?
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Omolara had already called me that she had gone to the hospital and she had gotten back. She was treated for malaria, even though she had made complaints about her ulcer. So she said that she wasn't feeling better and that when she got home, she began to have difficulty in breathing. So I hurried up to her place. I took her back because she wasn't feeling better and she had vomited almost everywhere in her house. When we got back to the hospital, the doctor said he was going to admit her. So I went back to her house. I went to take stuff that would be needed since we'll be passing the night at the hospital. When I got back to the hospital, she was already in a ward that was on the second floor. I found out that she was being administered some injections too. And there was a device that was placed on her thumb. So they asked me to check on that device from time to time and raise an alarm when the device reads 90. So before the nurses even left and the doctors, she had already made a complaint very obvious that she's not breathing well and then she cannot lie down. They were trying to ask her to lie down so that they'll give her the injection via her veins, but she said she couldn't lie down properly. From time to time, I noticed that she was not getting well, so I was reaching out to the nurses, going from floor to floor, and at some point, the device stopped working, so I took it along with me down to the next floor before us. So I gave it to the nurse, and then I made a complaint again that she's not feeling better and she's not even resting, like she's not lying down. Before I got back to the ward, she was already seated where I was sitting watching over her, and she claimed that that's the position that she prefers. As she at that time she was not talking anymore. She was just doing sign languages and all that. So I reached out to the nurses again. Then the one nurse came and said that the injection she's about to give her is going to make her relax that she's going to calm down, she's going to relax, and then she's going to sleep off. So she was given that injection, and after a while, she lied down, but then her breathing even became worse, and she could not talk. Her eyes were half open, her mouth was open as she was breathing through her mouth, and the breathing was very difficult, like she was gasping for air. It was very obvious, and she was making sounds. Another doctor came in after a while and said that her condition is critical, and that maybe the doctor raised an alarm and like suggested new ways to handling her. And doctor said they should bring oxygen. There was reluctance in getting that oxygen, but I tried to I put effort, and then the oxygen was brought. I carried the oxygen at some point, and then she was given oxygen. Not too long, they switched the oxygen source from a short white vacuum to a cylinder. So they checked her BP, and they started to ask me questions like, does she have asthma? Does she smoke? Does she have any underlying health issue? So I was like, you should have asked her all these things before even treating her. Then they asked me to reach out to her family. At that time, it was to 1 or past, but thereabouts, but it was already midnight. So
That's 1 a.m., right?
Yes, 1 a.m. It was already midnight. I reached out to the family, and I tried to ask them questions, but to no avail. At that point, the members of our family that I reached out to were already panicking. So I tried to calm them down.
So what do you mean to no avail? Did you ask questions and they didn't respond?
They did respond. They responded. But it seemed like the doctors were trying to get an answer from them. Maybe like a kind of negative answer. Because the sister claimed that Omolara had come over to her at Abuja for a medical checkup, and then the results was given to her, and then she was rescheduled for another appointment the next month, but she had to travel down to Lagos. But they kept on asking that what was the result of the test or the scan that she went for, and the result was that she had ulcer. That was the first time that they detected her ulcer, and that was years ago, not even this year. Not even
so
last.
She's a non-peptic ulcer disease patient.
Yes.
What's your relationship with her?
She's my very close friend. She's my best friend.
Okay. For how many years have you been very close?
We've been very close for like 2 years now.
Okay. So sorry about your loss, Ayomide. So at what point was referral made to LASUTH?
Referral was made like as that. It was not even an official referral. They just told me that I needed to get her out of that place, that I needed to take her to LASUTH. And we asked why. In fact, I tried to call her brother. The brother said that maybe because of distance, we should try and get another hospital in Arepo. That's where she stays. But they said that then there's no point getting another hospital around there. Like she needed experts, something like
care.
she needed.
Okay,
Yeah,
so was there an ambulance that you used to move to LASUTH?
They didn't provide any ambulance. In fact, I said that I was going to wait because of the time. I said I was going to wait maybe for their own ambulance. I even asked them what time will the ambulance be ready. They made a phone call, and then they said very early the next morning. So I said I was going to wait, and they tried to discourage me, saying that the oxygen will not last up to 3 hours.
Okay. All right, so let's thanks for that account. Let's get to Mr. Segun. You made a video where you explained, it was a very emotional video. But from the point you learned that Omolara died, what had happened between then and now, especially in your engagement with has the hospital made any statement? We've tried to get across to the hospital. That has not been successful, but can you give us quickly, within a couple of minutes, what it has been since this story went out?
Okay, thank you, doctor. So I heard about her passing on Friday. She passed on Thursday morning, early hours of Thursday. On Friday, I heard about it. Unfortunately, she had been buried that same Thursday. And it gave me so much worry. But then I said, okay, I'm just going to make a move. So I reached out to Ayo. And then I went to pick Ayo, myself and my peer, and then we drove down to, and some of our friends, we drove down to the hospital. I knew the first place to go was to the hospital to go and even find out from them what actually happened. So getting to the hospital, fortunately the MD was on sick, and then they told him we're around. So they invited us to his office. Obviously, he didn't even know until that particular point that Omolara had passed. You know, it was when they told him that we were outside that they brought the laptop to him and the report, and he quickly, went through it. It was so obvious. He was fidgeting, he was shaking. He didn't. So I said, Doctor, are you not aware? He said he only referred, that he called in at about 12:31, and he said anything that has to do with breathing, that they should please refer. That was what he instructed. And I said, are you also aware that ambulance wasn't provided? He couldn't say anything. I said, are you also aware that oxygen was removed from her when they got to the car, from upstairs to the car? He wasn't aware. So it wasn't even in the report. So when we came in, he was showing us that he is aware that she had been like their patient over time since 2019, and that when she came, these were the drugs they prescribed. He was showing us on the laptop, and these were the drugs they administered and all of that. And that when they called and said it was breathing issue, he just referred. And I said, well, your people removed the oxygen from her nose, and then she didn't make it to last week. He didn't know. Doctor, he did not know. So it was now confused. He now started apologizing and saying he's sorry, that he's not happy how everything was handled. He acknowledged that they messed up. So we said, okay, no problem. We're going to take it off. I took his call card and then I left. So I reached out to my lawyer, sent everything, all the proof and all that to my lawyer. And then my lawyer said we should just give it time and let's see what will happen.
Okay. So, Mr. Olorinekpa, sorry I'm cutting you. We have to really manage our time. My last question to you, do you know if there was an autopsy before your friend Omolara was buried?
Unfortunately, I'm not aware because I didn't know when she was buried. So I'm still trying to reach out to the family members that were there to find out. But then the FCC PC already reached out to us too, telling us their interest, the federal government's interest in the case, and they want they want us to produce some summons so that they can start investigations. So that's it.
Okay. So what about Lagos State government authorities? Has there been any action on that end?
I only saw it in newspaper that Lagos State is interested in the case, but as far as I'm concerned, they did not reach out to either Ayomide or myself.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Segun Olorinekpa and Ms. Ayomide Oni. Thanks for joining us on the program, and so sorry about the loss of your friend Omolara.
Thank you. Thank you for having us, Doctor. Pleasure.
Thank you.
So, you heard them. We are going to take a break, and when we return, my guest in the studio, I'll be introducing them after the break. We'll now have to analyze the situation. Do stay with us, and I'll be right back. Welcome back to Talking Health with Dr. Laz, your favorite health program on television. Yes, before the break, I believe you heard the account of friends of Omolara who died in Lagos due to alleged medical negligence. We are open to hearing the side of the hospital where you went to, and we'll keep making efforts to get across to them. But I have two guests here with me in the studio. By my left is Barrister Kenechukwu Agwu. He's a project officer at the Network of University Legal Aid Institute, and he's also Executive Secretary of Sabi Law Foundation. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Right, and by my right is a medical doctor, Dale Ogunbayo. He's also a health communication specialist.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Quickly, you heard the accounts given by the friends of Omolara. Let me begin with you, Dr. Ogunbayo. What's your take on that story they narrated?
Well, first, our condolences go out to the friends and family, but it's important to say that having not heard from the hospital, it may be a bit difficult to give a concise clinical assessment of what happened. But just from what we heard, there are standards that have been set in medicine each time you see a patient. And one of the first things you must do is to take adequate history so that you know who you are dealing with and what may have been the issues of the person before making contact with you. And then you take this on from there. That she said that midway into the treatment and management, they were asking Omolara's friend, about some key issues that should have been
whether she was
found out.
asthmatic or smoking.
Yes, those were things that the history should have elicited before from the beginning.
Right.
That makes one a bit curious as to whether no adequate history was taken. Then the statement that Omolara was just diagnosed of peptic ulcer disease some time ago, and that we're not sure whether the hospital she went to now, this particular hospital, was aware
of that history.
Because that's a very critical history. Because a very strong assumption now, and we cannot be categorically clear
about it
until we have an autopsy report. The very strong assumption now is that he probably had a bleeding peptic ulcer. And if that were the case, the lines of management would be very peculiar and clear. We do not know what happened. I mean, when you hear things like an injection was given, what injection? So clinically, one can make a proper assessment now, but there are a few gaps that one will wonder at. And it would be nice to hear from the hospital. And next time, like they often say, it is the dead that teach us how to take proper care of the living. Sometimes it's very good to have autopsies because this one help us know what truly happened and how to be able to
but assuming it's a peptic ulcer disease, you know, what could have been the steps that should have been taken?
Well, that's one of the first few things you should suspect. If you know this person has a peptic ulcer, again, you want to wonder what kind of injections are being given. It would have been best to do like an upper GI endoscopy, see whether it's bleeding, what level of bleeding. It may have been necessary to do an aspiration if there's blood accumulating.
Exactly.
Because the impression I get from what has been said is that probably there was bleeding into the gastrum, and that is irritating the diaphragm below, and then you start having shortness of breath and all that, which is that is my assumption. You know, but if that were the case, then you should have done an aspiration, you should have checked by endoscopy, and there may have been need to start considering a laparoscopy or a laparotomy, something to know what is going on in there and take definitive steps. So, but again, it would be nice to hear from the hospital, and an autopsy report would just have been very clear.
I would have just, said this the specific cause of death. Like in the case of Peju that also trended, there was an autopsy report that confirmed the cause of death.
That would be very helpful.
You know, so yeah, in that situation, we would have done a surgery if actually there's internal bleeding. So let me come to you, Barrister Agwu. Looking at the legal perspective to this, you know, what's your take hearing that story?
Okay, essentially, like Dr. Dale has said, you cannot critically take a legal position now because you haven't also heard from the hospital to say this is what has happened. And it's a very fundamental and primary principle of law that you must hear from both sides of a case. But I think this issue or this case leads us to a lot of things that have become common or that have become rampant, so to say, and that is negligence, medical negligence. So it may be good that Nigerians and doctors, specifically hospitals, are aware that there are acts that you don't just do. For instance, the removal of oxygen from a patient whom you've referred over the phone. You've referred over the phone to another hospital, and that's a distance, and you ask them to remove the oxygen and move without that. That's a clear act.
They moved on their own without an ambulance.
An ambulance. No health personnel went with them. Someone who is under your care, someone whom you've admitted, your patient. It doesn't speak well.
Yes, and looking at the standard practice for referral is when a patient comes to a hospital and you have a situation to refer, it's documented. They will have a letter, and if it's a critical case, they should move in an ambulance accompanied by a healthcare provider who will be monitoring the patient and get to the next point where the treatment is going to continue. And from the documentation, they will know what has been done and where to continue from. So it's not proper that referral is made and people bring a commercial vehicle, put in a patient, go and get stuck in traffic, and be, just wait on their feet. There's something, we're having a conversation around the right to health that is not in the Constitution, and the right to life that is, inferring that of health. Last week, my guest said it is not justiciable, and the feedback we got from some person like, no, this is justice. Lawyers are always divided on stuff like this. I hope someone could challenge that aspect of the law. So what's your take on that?
So first is that a lot of persons have, in thinking that is not justiciable, have not actually come up to the law courts to say, can this be done? Can we even try out this? Can we even expand the frontiers of the law to know what can happen? The truth is that the provision on health is a government, a principle of government objective, a directive is in Chapter 2, and is generally by Section 6 sub 6 of the Constitution, is generally not justiciable. However, Nigeria is a party, is a signatory to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. And being that signatory, it makes it justiciable. Again, I say, when you have a right to life, and you're not telling me that I don't have a right to health. Now, I would like to distinguish for us what is in Chapter 2. What we have in Chapter 2, is basically that the government should provide amenities. And that is what is not justiciable. So the fact that you've dealt with my health in a way that deprives me of my life or that disturbs me is highly justiciable. In fact, it amounts to an act of negligence, and negligence can be tried either as a criminal matter, as a civil matter in tort, or even a petition being sent to the Medical and Dental Council.
Against government or against the health institution?
Against the health institution.
Okay.
But the one against government is the one that Nigeria, being a signatory to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, makes it justiciable.
But the Constitution of Nigeria also has it that anything Nigeria signs at the international level, if the National Assembly does not legislate on it, is not justiciable. So Nigeria being a signatory to it doesn't make it automatically justiciable in Nigeria.
So that's exactly the point I'm saying, that people need to understand that that right to health that is put in the Chapter 2 has to do with government mandates, mandates to produce, to provide amenities, to make hospitals accessible and all that. So that is the point that is not justiciable according to our Constitution. But you could also expand the frontiers of law. I keep saying, if they say, okay, that you can't try it in the High Court in Nigeria, we'll have Africa courts, like the ECOWAS court. Why not take it to that place and see what will come out of it? But the point is that Nigerians should learn to come out, to speak up and challenge some of these things. Until we try it out, we may not really know whether it's there or not. So, but if we link it to the instant case of Omolara, they have every right to proceed because there's an infringement on her right to life.
So proceed against both the hospital and the government?
Of course, both the hospital and the medical doctor.
What about the government? Can Nigerians sue the government if it's in a government hospital, for instance?
Yes, of course. If it's in a government hospital, then they can.
All right. I think we're out of time. I wish we could, but we'll find time to continue this conversation, having a medical doctor and a lawyer in the studio. And I think I'm aware that Dr. Ogunbayo is also a law student. So you can imagine what will happen when he's done with the law program. I would have liked to say your last words, but please bear with me. I really want to thank you, Dr. Dale Ogunbayo, for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much, Laz.
I'm Barrister Kenechukwu Agwu of Nulai and Sabi Law. Thanks for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much, Dr. Laz.
Okay, and to you, our viewers, the essence is essentially to create more awareness around issue of medical negligence. We got all your feedback after last week and really like them. Yes, many health workers were asking us, when are we going to talk about the rights of health workers? Definitely we'll talk about the rise of health workers on the program, possibly next week or within the next couple of weeks. So, but the patients are number one, and they are the reason why we have health workers in the first place. So that's why we had to start with the patients. Keep watching this station, and let's see you again, same station, same time next week. My name is Dr. Laz Eze. Bye for now.